Okay guys, welcome back to the channel. We've had an email in from a guy who wants to share his story about meeting a bar girl. He went to Thailand to meet her, fell in love with her, and now I think he's looking for a bit of advice on what to do next because he's stuck. So yeah, let's jump into this story. I have listened to a lot of the stories on this channel, and although my story is again about a bar girl, it is somewhat unique. Most stories online start with meeting a bar girl, well, in a bar obviously. But that is not where I met mine, and that is maybe why mine is a little different. Let's get into my situation and see if anyone has a similar story that could shed some light on my situation. So, a few months ago, armed with up-to-date info and listening to the good and bad stories of guys that have recently been to Thailand, I set off on my 4th trip to Bangkok. I had been in Thailand a few times before, but I always travelled outside of Bangkok and did not really stay in the city for too long. My previous visits to Thailand is not much to talk about. I did not exactly jump into the nightlife. It was more of a shopping and food tour, seeing if I actually liked the country. I did enjoy my trips, but they wasn't as exciting as others that share their nightlife experience. I was pretty much a normal traveller that preferred sightseeing and seeing the history of the kingdom rather than the ladies. I guess I just wasn't looking for that type of fun at the time, though I must admit I did start finding Thai women very attractive from the moment that I landed. I don't know what it was about them. I had never had a desire for Thais before, and it never even crossed my mind that I would be attracted to all the women there. I think a big part of it is how they look at you and treat you compared to the women back in our home countries, not to mention their beautiful, unique looks that they all seem to have. My most recent trip would be different, because this time I had been chatting to a nice Thai woman on Tinder for more than a year. Because I found Thai women extremely attractive, there is a premium version of Tinder where you can set the location to other places around the world and not just where you are locally. Obviously, I set mine to Bangkok. She was very attractive and kind of out of my league, judging from the pictures on her profile. I imagined that she got a lot of messages and thought that she wouldn't have the time of day for someone like me, and at first, I was right. I first messaged her and got no replies. After a couple of days, I put it down to a loss and I carried on swiping, looking for other girls. Then, around 2 weeks after my first message, she actually replied to me. She apologised for her late reply and told me she was super busy and did not really have time to message me. I knew nothing about her at the time, so even though I thought it was a lie, and that she probably was just chatting to someone else, who was I to judge? I said it was okay and made some joke about her being the one that got away. That seemed to work and we started chatting on a regular basis. Although she knew that I was not in Thailand and a million miles away, it did not seem to bother her and she was happy to carry on our online chatting. When we first started talking, it was just a general type of conversation you can have with anyone. But as we continued to talk more, we found that we had a lot in common and had similar values and interests. She did tell me early on in our first initial chats that she worked in a bar, but only as a cashier, and did not go with customers for money. Now, before you all laugh at me, after reading all the stories online, I knew exactly what this meant. She was a bar girl. After she told me that, it pretty much made sense why it took her so long to reply. She was probably entertaining a customer for a couple of weeks as a holiday girlfriend or something like that. But at the time, it was early days, so it did not bother me as we was not serious. Even after a long time talking, it never bothered me really. I don't know why. I guess I was just accepting of her way of making money. Over a year talking online to someone is a long time for anyone, and our relationship had grown as much as it could without actually meeting in person. There was a big chance that if we stayed in an online relationship, then it could all of a sudden go cold and we drift away from each other, especially since there is a big time difference, which means we can't talk all hours of the day. Nothing exciting was happening in my life at the time. I was single, didn't have a regular hookup, and I did not really do much in my spare time. The only good thing really in my life at the time was that my job was pretty decent and it required me to travel a lot overseas, so I got to see a lot of new places and meet a lot of new people. All my money was saved for travelling, so why not put it to some good use? With that in mind, I figured it was time that we meet in person. I broke the question to her, "What do you think about me coming to Thailand and we meet up?" She seemed very happy with this and seemed as eager to meet as I was, which was a relief. To be honest, I was kind of expecting her to give me some excuse about meeting and just wanted to keep me as an online fling. I know that some bar girls, especially the most beautiful ones, do not have much time on their hands and have multiple customers after, during and before working at the bar, so I was pretty happy with her response. I would like to note that in this whole year that we had been talking, she only asked me for money once, and then she never asked me to send money or buy her anything again, nor did she hint at anything like that. The one time she did ask for money, it was around 10,000 baht, and this was because the girl that she rented a room with had gone off with some customer to some island and did not pay her share of the rent. The girl ended up not going back to the apartment and moved in to the customer's place, so I offered to help out with the rent for the time being. I believe this was a true story and she was not out to scam me, because as I said, she did not ask for anything again. So, with all that set and the agreement to meet, we started planning our meeting. We started to plan way in advance so there shouldn't be no roadblocks for either of us. My job requires me to frequently visit Asian countries, though not for long periods of time, so I do not have much free time when I visit these countries. We set a date to meet when I would already be in Malaysia for business, so my flight to Bangkok would be quite short of a journey. Pillin, not her real name, would take a week off from her job. Surprisingly, she did not ask me to cover her wages, bar fines, or anything like that. The date came and it was time for me to board my flight from Malaysia to Bangkok. Once I arrived, I cleared the dreaded Bangkok immigration, got my luggage and made my way through the crowd of people screaming "Taxi sir," until I found a place to stand to look out for Pillin. I stood there for 5 minutes. 5 minutes turned into 10 and then 15. I started to get a little worried because it never crossed my mind that I would be stood up. In fact, me and Pillin had become so close that I didn't even have a plan B for if she did not show up. Finally, I heard someone call my name from the back. I turned around and there she was, every bit as beautiful as she was on the video chats and the photos that she had sent me over the year. Now, meeting a girl in my country for the first time, I would normally hug or kiss on the cheek, but after a lot of research about Thai culture, which was confirmed later by Pillin, they prefer to refrain from public affection, so I just shook her hand and said happy to finally meet you. Trust me, it was hard to not just grab her and kiss her, even if just a kiss on the cheek, but I thought I would be a gentleman and respect her culture. After our greeting, she took me to the departure entrance so that we could bypass the taxis and avoided all the extra charges that we would have faced, especially for foreigners. This is just one example of many during my visit, which being with Pillin, a Thai woman, made things so much easier and less of a hassle. There is no telling how many times during my trip I would have been overcharged or paid for something unnecessary. Before my trip to Thailand to meet Pillin, we discussed the sleeping arrangements in which I welcomed her to stay with me in the hotel for the whole visit if she wished to, and that I did not have a problem with that at all. Even though I had read online that this would be a risky thing to offer when meeting a Thai woman for the first time. Maybe I was just love-struck, or stupid, to offer that, but I felt it would be better to trust from the start. Besides, I had a good feeling about Pillin and did not think she was the type of person to do anything bad towards me, like run off with all of my cash. Even with my offer about staying with me at the hotel for the trip, she said that she would see how things went between us first and would decide then if she wanted to stay with me at the hotel on the second half of my trip. I was fine with that because obviously she needed to feel safe as well, and it's shown me that she does not jump into bed with anyone the first time she meets them, so I was perfectly comfortable with this answer. We eventually got to the hotel, which was located close to the MBK Centre. I went to check in as Pillin sat in the lobby area. Even though Pillin had said she would not be staying with me, I thought it would be wise to be on good terms with the hotel staff, so I told the front desk that I would be having a frequent Thai visitor that may be staying overnight, and that I would be willing to pay the rate for extra company if it is needed. That being said, I was never charged for anything extra, and was never questioned about Pillin coming or going. We got into the room, and I was a sweaty mess due to the Bangkok heat, so I took a shower and changed into some better clothing. Finally, in private, I saw Pillin come out of the nervous, cute woman she was at the airport to a more relaxed, sweet woman that I had previously been talking to for the past year. When I was dressed and made up, she gave me a big smile, walked over to me and gave me a hug, saying, "I'm so glad that you came." It was like heaven being able to see her beautiful smile that I had been longing for, touch her soft skin and experience her being so thankful that I had took the trip just to meet her. I admit, I was also nervous at the airport, but I soon became very comfortable with her, and she seemed to be very relaxed with me. We hugged tight for a few seconds, then she gave me a kiss on the lips. That kind of threw me off guard a bit, because I thought I would have to do some work first before our first kiss. After a short but sweet moment together, we started making rough plans about what we would do for the trip, but as evening was falling and we both hadn't eaten yet, we agreed to go out and get some food. It was our first day together, and even though I was a little tired from the travelling, I wanted to make the most of our trip, so we decided to go out rather than order food. Pillin had suggested we go to a restaurant she knew that would be a short taxi ride away. It was an outdoor place by the river, which I thought would be a nice romantic first date. When we arrived at the restaurant, I can only describe it as a rickety old hut that had seen better days. It looked like it was about to fall down anytime soon. However, the location of the place was very nice. Despite the condition of the restaurant and the thought that I might be crushed anytime soon, the food was absolutely delicious. I was already a big fan of Thai food since my first trip, but it had been such a long time since I had eaten unique Thai food directly from Thailand. I allowed Pillin to choose the food and surprise me, which was for the best as there was not a word of English on the menu. She did not disappoint with her selection of food. While having dinner, we just enjoyed each other's company, talking about anything that came up. She did mention that she would come back to the hotel with me after dinner to relax, although I guessed she would return home before it was time for us to call it a night. Once we were all finished up with dinner, Pillin insisted on paying for it. This is something I did not want her to do, and explained to her that I am prepared to pay for everything that we did together. She was a little hesitant and kept insisting, so I just said that she can share some of the expenses, but not a big amount, and this seemed to please her. It was kind of nice that we could talk about money and expenses early on in the trip, so it wouldn't cause awkwardness in the future. We never discussed this again, nor did it come up in conversation. It was never a problem. We soon made our way back to the hotel after a fantastic and romantic first night. Once we were in the hotel, she told me that she wished she had brought some extra clothes. It quickly became apparent that she wanted to spend the night with me after all. I told her not to worry and that she could use one of my t-shirts. Then first thing in the morning, we can head over to her place where she can get a change of clothes. She was fine with this and wearing one of my t-shirts and decided to stay the night. Out of respect for Pillin, I won't go into too much detail about what happened our first night together. Let's just say she was very eager to please, and now I believe a lot of the stories I read about meeting Thai girls. She did not disappoint, and I went to sleep with a big smile on my face. The next morning we woke up and laid in bed in each other's arms for about an hour, just talking random stuff before we finally made some plans. She seemed fine with spending more nights at the hotel with me, so the plan was to head to Pillin's place so she could pack some clothes, then head to a market and then take her clothes back to the hotel that evening. The taxi ride to Pillin's apartment is where our first minor problem happened. While sitting in the taxi driver was constantly talking to Pillin. I literally couldn't get a word in. It was like I was invisible and he was trying his best to not let me talk. I leaned over to say something to Pillin, and in doing so, I put my arm around her, quickly realizing almost straight away that it was not appropriate to do that in public. I apologized almost the second I did it, but it was already too late. "Stop, you cannot touch me in public," she said. The taxi driver's voice then got louder as he looked in the mirror to address Pillin. Although he was speaking Thai, I guessed that he was offering to defend her and get me out of the taxi, which was true and later confirmed by Pillin herself. She told me that she assured him there was not a problem and I just wasn't used to how people act in Thailand. It was pretty laughable thinking about it. The taxi driver was a small, old, skinny Thai guy. That being said, I did not want to cause any trouble, so like an outsider, I just sat there and became silent while the driver continued to chew Pillin's ear off in conversation. A few moments later, it seemed that the driver had to take a break from talking and finally get some air into his lungs. I quietly voiced my concern to Pillin. I did not say it in anger or being rude. I told her that I think she overreacted a bit and I feel like I'm invisible right now, and that if she preferred the company of the driver, I wouldn't mind finding another taxi to take me back to the hotel. Maybe I was the one that overreacted a bit and acted like a child, but I could tell by her looks that she knew I meant it. I don't care how beautiful a woman is. I have no problem removing myself from situations that make me feel small and pathetic. Surprisingly, she replied with, "Sorry, I understand," and she took my hand and placed it on her knee. She told me that it's fine to touch as long as she is the one that places my hand there. For the rest of the journey, it was like the driver was no longer there and he knew it. I could see the jealousy in his face. She completely ignored him except to give him instructions and directions, in spite of the fact he tried to interrupt our conversations every chance he got. Needless to say, no tip was given for that trip. For the rest of my trip in Thailand, any time that we would take taxis somewhere, she always held my hand. I did notice that any time we had a young taxi driver, they would always attempt to talk to her or interrupt our conversation. Even when Pillin would give them short replies, they would still continue to try and talk. Was this jealousy because a Thai woman was with a farang? Or just bad manners? Or maybe the fact that she was a beautiful woman? Anyway, I later found out that it wasn't just Pillin that would be receiving all of the attention. We were out shopping, and on more than one occasion, a woman would try and get my attention and start talking to me, even when I was stood next to Pillin with my hand in hers. I would just smile, nod, and keep walking. In spite of reading this stuff happens all the time in Thailand, I must admit it was quite shocking and somewhat refreshing to get all that attention as a middle-aged man that isn't what most people would call handsome, though not terribly ugly. Anyway, back to our taxi ride. We finally reached Pillin's apartment, where she rushed in to fetch clothes while I sat in awkward silence with the taxi driver. She returned with a small bag of clothes, some toiletries, and for some reason a few packs of noodles. Then we continued to the floating market. Despite the few slightly awkward moments in the taxi, the day was pretty good. For any listeners that have never been to the floating market, I cannot suggest it enough. It's a great experience, especially if you are from the West. For lunch, Pillin ordered me some type of Thai street food salad with sticky rice. It was extremely spicy, but probably the best salad I have ever eaten in my life. We then went on a boat tour that lasted a couple of hours. It was pretty nice, but I was keeping my mouth tightly shut as the dirty water would keep splashing up on us. Although I felt Pillin had become relaxed with me after our first meeting at the airport, I realised that she still had her guard up slightly, that she was slowly letting it down. After being together for 24 hours without a minute apart, I think she realised I wasn't like the stereotypical drunk foreigner that comes to Thailand for fun. She could see that I enjoyed to do other things rather than go to the bars at night and be a hungover mess in the day. She was probably starting to trust that I would continue being the same respectable, sensible person I had been since meeting. My previous trips, I did not get to experience the true good nature of Thai people. The floating market where I was interacting with other Thais is where I realised just how nice these people are. Though I suppose I was getting this much attention because I was accompanied by a Thai woman, but I still enjoyed it. I live in an area where most neighbours don't even smile at each other, let alone have a conversation. So it was refreshing and a very good feeling to be in this type of environment in another country. It was time to head back to the hotel after the boat tour to take a shower to wash off the water that splashed on us and have some private time alone, if you get what I mean. Later that evening, we headed to MBK Centre where we had dinner. The rest of that night was spent back at the hotel, enjoying each other's company. We connected really well and was talking with excitement until the early hours of the morning, until we finally dropped off to sleep. When we woke up, we carried on our conversation like we had never been asleep. It was a great feeling having this type of connection with somebody. Late that morning, we thought it would be fun to head to Koh Kret, so a taxi ride and boat ride later, we arrived, which turned out to be an enjoyable experience. The people there were so nice to us. Almost everywhere we walked, we were greeted nicely and looked after. We hired someone to take us around the river on one of them low boat things. All this was such a great experience, and sharing this moment with Pillin made it unforgettable. During the evening, we ate at the same restaurant we did on the previous night because Pillin seemed to enjoy that place. The rest of the night was spent just enjoying each other's company again. I have read so many unhappy stories online and on your channel, so I think I was observing Pillin more than I would have if I had been dating a girl in my own country. But during our trip to Koh Kret, I noticed how genuine Pillin was and that she wasn't just putting on an act in front of me. She seemed kind and caring to everyone that interacted with us. Having said that, I already believed in her sincerity during the year we had been chatting. The more time I spent with Pillin, the more I was drawn to her. I just did not want the trip to end. She was perfect. I was just hoping that she felt the same way about me. So that night, we talked a little about the future and made plans for the next day to take a trip to Koh Si Chang. Before my arrival in Thailand, Pilin had expressed her interest to go there as she kept bringing it up in conversation. So I thought it would be a nice gesture for me to suggest we go there, although I was a bit skeptical about taking the bus as I had heard many horror stories about the roads and bus trips in Thailand. I did mention to Pilin my concern about the trip, but she put my mind at ease and told me the bus we would be taking was very safe and nothing bad would happen. I can't exactly remember the name we got the bus to, but I believe the name is Sriracha from Bangkok, and it was dirt cheap. Again, like many other occasions on my trip, I was the only farang in sight, but again, nobody made me feel uncomfortable. In fact, I got plenty of smiles when I got on the bus. The 2-hour, surprisingly pleasant bus ride was then followed by us jumping into a tuk-tuk and heading for the dock, to then jump on a ferry and head to the island, which took about 1 hour, I believe. Arriving at the dock, we were soon surrounded by many of the tuk-tuk drivers until Pilin negotiated with one of them to be our driver for the whole day for only 250 baht. And this guy turned out to be a total star. He took us to several possible places to stay before we decided on one, and showing up on time to take us to every place that we wanted to go. He was also very kind and friendly, being helpful without being aggressive, telling us where to go and when to do it. It was pretty obvious that for whatever reason, most people that we interacted with were happily eager to please Pilin. Since I live near beaches at home, I was not too overwhelmed by Koh Si Chang's main beach. However, getting delicious food delivered to you at the beach chairs at home for under 200 baht would be an impossible task. The island, I believe, is underrated. It's one of those rare places where everyone that does business with tourists seem to have a positive vibe towards them. A lot of people we met there had very little English, but still always tried to include me in their conversations with Pilin, which I found very respectful. It really is a wonderful place to spend some time if you ever have the chance. During the afternoon on the island, we did what Pilin really wanted to do, which was go to a temple in a cave which was located above a bunch of stairways. She asked if I would like to join her in prayers. I am a non-religious person myself and pretty much an atheist, but I was interested, so I accepted the offer on the grounds that she would show me what to do, as I had no idea. After praying with her, I did actually feel great, but not sure if it was Buddhism hitting me or just the fact I may have been falling in love with Pilin. Either way, I liked the feeling. I could tell by Pilin's face and attitude that she was really happy and grateful that I participated with her, knowing I am not religious. The place we were staying was just up the hill at Koh Kad Point. We chose the closest place to the water so we could be watching the sunset. Pilin was gazing at the sunset while I was gazing at her. Just everything about her I loved. I had seen more beautiful sunsets than this before, but never have I seen any with a more beautiful woman. She was perfection in my eyes. The next morning, Pilin wanted to watch the sunrise, so we had an early start and got out of bed around 5:30 am. We made our way to the top of the hill and chose a different gazebo to watch the sunrise. Since it was pretty early and there was a cold breeze and nobody else around to see us, Pilin snuggled herself next to me. At that moment, I can remember thinking to myself how perfect my life is right now. We proceeded to have breakfast, and for the first time on my trip, I had a Western meal. Pilin wanted to pray at the temple one more time before we left, but once we arrived at the temple, it quickly became overrun by a tour and we cut our trip short. We left around 1:30 PM to return to Bangkok. We headed to the dock with the same tuk-tuk driver we had the whole trip, gave him a nice tip and thanked him for his great service. Then, after that, took a ferry boat, another tuk-tuk, a bus and a long taxi ride until we finally arrived at the hotel around 7 p.m. We were both exhausted, so instead of going out for dinner, we ordered in, which was a nice change, then decided to stay at the hotel for the rest of the evening. During my trip, I started to wonder if Pillin was suggesting things to do based on what she thought I wanted to do. I did ask her about this, and she said that her suggestions was also things she wanted to do, as were my suggestions. The only thing I suggested that Pillin showed no interest in was to go to a Western restaurant for food. However, I was comfortable with eating Thai food, so it wasn't an issue at all. One night, while we were just relaxing at the hotel room without no plans, we started to discuss some of the farang Thai relationships I had read and heard about. The topic soon came up about our future together and the idea of me moving to Bangkok for a year to see how our relationship would turn out. Although she said that she liked the idea of me moving here, she did not seem too excited about it, and I felt like she was only agreeing with me because I was there and she was put on the spot. I changed the subject and brought up the other idea of bringing her to the States and how she would cope being away from her family, friends, and most importantly, Thai food. She actually seemed more interested in this option rather than me moving to Bangkok. But we both decided to talk about the future after I had left. There was no point in talking about it yet and potentially ruin our first trip together. Besides, things like that need a lot of discussing and thinking from both sides. The following last days, we both started to realise that this trip would not last forever and would be coming to an end soon. I noticed Pillin getting sad, and our bubbly fun conversations would turn more sentimental. She tried to hide her feelings at first, but later admitted she was having moments of sadness about me leaving, and to be honest, I would have done too, but this trip had made me so happy that it was hard for me to dwell on the what ifs. I was just enjoying my time with her and wanted to worry about the next stages once the trip was over and I had arrived home. We went to a few more temples and tourist sites, but they were all overcrowded. I much preferred times where me and Pillin was alone and in each other's company. One evening, we were shopping and walking around MBK. Pillin showed an interest in a bracelet. No, it wasn't expensive or something that would break the bank, but after her taking time off work to be with me the whole trip, I thought the least I could do was to buy it for her. This was the first and only time she accepted something from me. She never asked or hinted at anything before this. She was very appreciative, and I could tell she felt very proud that I purchased it for her. She showed no interest in anything else, and I think that is because she did not want to seem like a gold digger of sorts. While in MBK, I was telling Pillin that I have never visited any of the nightlife areas that I have read so much about. She suggested it would be fun and interesting for me to see what it is like. I told her about the stories that I had heard about Sukhumvit Road, Kawasan and Pat Pong. She suggested we go walk around Pat Pong, so we jumped in a taxi and headed there. But in no less than 20 minutes, after walking the streets and seeing what it's all about, and walking past a bar with a guy dressed in leather smashing a whip around to try and get us in the bar, we were in a taxi heading back to the mall. That lifestyle is just not for me, but fair play to all the guys that can handle that on a daily basis. More power to you. The mall was almost closing by the time we got there, so we decided to head back to the hotel. We spent another night just cuddling, talking and kissing. Although I was also getting moments of sadness pushed upon me, I was trying to keep it bottled up to keep our last night together light-hearted. It mostly worked, but at times I could see Pillin going quiet and turning away from me for a moment. I could tell by her eyes she was becoming sad. However, she could have just been tired from the busy trip we have had and the amount of sleep we were both lacking. The bedroom fun that night was more loving and tender than before, with both of us realising that this fantastic trip would be coming to an end and we would be going back to our normal lives. The next day, it was my last day. We did not want to do much in the morning, so we slept late in each other's arms. Knowing that I could not show much affection once we were out of the hotel room and in public, we made most of our early morning in bed together. Now the time which we had both been dreading had arrived. It was time to go to the airport. We got there and I checked in my bags, then returned to sit with Pillin before I had to make my way to the gate. She was trying hard to not cry, and her attempt at hiding her feelings was failing. I couldn't help myself. This time, in public, I put my arm around her to comfort her. I tried to make some silly joke which helped a little, and I saw the smile return to her face. We held on to each other, and for the first time ever, she gave me a kiss on the lips in public before it was time for me to head through the gate, looking back and waving one last time as she made her way out of the exit. Since leaving Thailand, me and Pillin have spoke a lot. Funnily enough, we have never spoke about her line of work, and nor has it ever really bothered me. I don't understand why I don't care about that. I just don't. We have both expressed interest in moving our relationship forward to the next stage, but none of us are 100% certain which option we should choose. Although I do believe that she is being genuine to me about her feelings and does really like me and want to see what the future holds, I'm well aware that anything could happen that could cause our situation to change. The worst possible case for me is her meeting a rich customer that pays her out of the bar and starts a new life with her, abandoning our relationship. If that did happen, at least I would have the memories of a week that a lot of guys could only dream of having. On the other hand, the best case for me is that I move to Bangkok or she moves here and we have a fulfilling relationship together. Ultimately, for our relationship to go any further and progress, both of us need to be willing to take risks. I think I am very lucky to have met Pillin at a time where a lot of people have shared their stories and experiences online and on channels like this. As a result of this, I was well prepared of whatever may have happened when I went to meet Pillin. I have been very fortunate that none of the things that are shared in horror stories have happened to me yet, touch wood. Though I have read about something called the long game, where Thai girls will ask for nothing in the first stages of the relationship, then clean you out later on in the relationship. After spending time with Pillin, I do not think for 1 minute that she would do that to me, or anyone for that matter. In fact, many of the good things that I have read about Thai women and farang Thai relationships, I actually experienced myself with Pillin, such as her not taking me to her friends' bars all the time, constantly drinking, or asking me to buy her things. She did put a lot of effort into my trip and also made some sacrifices like not going to work for a week to make sure our time together was as good as it could be. And in my eyes, it couldn't have gone any better. I loved every minute of it. Even the slight hiccup with the taxi driver was an experience in itself to learn more about how each other act. Now, my next concern is that our next steps together might not be as successful and fulfilling as the first one. After being with Pillin every single second of the week and falling for her completely, I noticed how comfortable she is in her own environment. Thailand and the States are completely different in many ways. The way of life is just different. I'm worried that if we did decide for her to make the move to the States and leave Thailand, would she find the same type of comfort here that she does there? She would have to adapt to a completely new lifestyle. And then there is the other option of me moving to Bangkok. While I do enjoy spending vacation time in Thailand for a few months of the year, I don't know if I will be able to handle the lifestyle, the hot weather, and working remotely. That being said, I have worked in other Asian countries before, like Malaysia and the Philippines, with no problems. Although I wasn't there permanently or for a long period of time. Also, if I did move to Thailand to start a serious relationship with Pillin, what would I do about her work? I don't think I could live there and be in a relationship with someone that is out all night working? Would it be wrong for me to tell her that? Ask her to find a new job as I don't like her current job? To me, that sounds like I would come off a little controlling and would ultimately put her off being in a relationship with me. Concerns aside, my time with Pilin was precious that I will always cherish, and my interactions with Thai people in general and the positive vibes they gave me during the trip I will always remember. The stories on this channel, and especially the comments, I see people saying, "Your girl is not different from the rest," which I believed up until I met Pilin. I know most of the advice I would receive about being in a relationship with a bar girl is to run as fast as I can and don't look back. I just wish people would see it from my point of view and how much I feel like she is actually different and is looking for something serious as well. I know each person's story here is unique and all have different outcomes, mainly bad outcomes, but still. I do hope that I have a future with Pilin and things do turn out well with us continuing our relationship. I guess only time will tell, and some risks will have to be taken. I will end with this. Yes, I am crazy about Pilin, and yes, I truly believe she is different from the rest.